Guys, welcome back to Box, the football talk show powered by Sportsology TV. This week, we have another guest, somebody who's been around the football game for a long time, knows his football, talks a lot about football. But before I introduce him, before Ali introduces him, I want to talk about last week's guest. He did not hold back. This was Gabi Agbonlahor talking about the nonsense VAR decisions that are going on at the moment. He went in passionately on Mike Dean. Talked about Aston Villa season, talked about Gareth Bale, Thiago going to Liverpool and everything else to do with football. So our link's going to be somewhere over here. Also, make sure you follow our social media platforms. The links are in the description below. But Ali, this week, who have you got on?
We have another great guest this week on Box to Box. We are joined by a sports presenter who has worked on the likes of the BBC, Sky Sports, Radio 5 Live, and you'll hear him regularly on TalkSport. We are delighted to be joined by Hugh Woozencroft. Hello, Hugh, how are you?
I'm good, how you doing?
Yeah, good, we're good. How is life treating you as a sports presenter, obviously in this current climate? Are things back to normal for you?
Well, things have never changed for me. I kept doing my show, Talk Sports, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, 7 till 10. I've been doing it every week of this year. Maybe I had 1 week off and had a little break. But yeah, in fact, it's been, I'm not going to say just as busy. Obviously, there was a period where there was a lot less travel. But generally speaking, you know, I'm one of the lucky ones in that my work stayed the same through 2020, which, yeah, is a blessing.
Hugh, I want to ask you, obviously you're a football fan, but then you've got to present shows where you've got to try to be sort of neutral. How do you play about with that? Because I get a lot of criticism because I have Cantona over there, I have Ronaldo over there. We had Neil Melleron, a Liverpool football player, a couple of weeks ago, and he started having a go at me. So how do you sort of deal with being neutral?
You know, I spent a long time, 10 years at the BBC, where firstly you're just trained to be impartial, generally speaking. But even now, if I speak about the club I support, you have to be fair. You know, impartiality really just means fairness. You know, it doesn't mean never give an opinion about anyone. It's just make sure your opinion's fair. So for me, it's pretty easy. I wouldn't want to be the sort of person that would say something that they don't believe. And certainly I don't want to be the sort of person that would say something and not have a strong opinion or evidence to back it up. So those are the two things. Make sure you're fair and make sure if you do have a strong opinion that you can back it up.
Right, well, should we start talking about the latest football news? We'll start off just talking about probably the biggest talking point in football at the moment, the VAR debate. Obviously, a lot happened this weekend based on changing results because of VAR. What is your opinion on VAR?
Well, this weekend was not the fault of VAR. Let's be clear about that. So the video assistant referees this weekend are just enforcing the rules. And this year, the changes that we've seen are because instead of the Premier League being in charge of how rules are interpreted, IFAB, the global rule makers, are now in charge of how the rules are interpreted. And they have a more stringent interpretation than the Premier League did. We've already seen it for the last couple of years in Spain. We've seen it for a year in Italy, and they've had 3 or 4 times the amount of penalties given for handball than we've had in England. So it's something that we should start getting used to very, very quickly because there will be plenty of penalties given for handball this year. I would say I don't agree with the rule necessarily. I feel like, you know, completely accidental handballs shouldn't be punished. It doesn't matter where they are. I am one that feels like handling the ball shouldn't lead directly to a goal, because I do feel like it's football, and so if a hand's going to have that much of an influence, then you're probably changing what the sport was created for. But in terms of defensive handballs and blocks and stuff like that, I think we can all tell what handball is. If you put your hands out into a position that really is you basically trying to make a save and it hits your arm, then it's fair enough. And we saw at the weekend Neil Maupay against Harry Maguire, Brighton, Manchester United, last moment of the game. He had his arm up. He was trying to make himself big against Harry Maguire. The ball was headed against his arm. That's handball. Joel Ward, Crystal Palace against Everton. Luca Digne heads the ball down, basically into him. His arm was not in a natural position. He wasn't trying to block the header with his arm. That's accidental. Play on. So, look, it's something we're going to have to adapt to very, very quickly. Those saying that the game's gone and it's ruined and This is the final straw. Yeah, I think that all of that talk is a little bit over the top and a little bit premature. It's something that football fans have to get used to very quickly.
Hugh, just talking about the handballs then, there's two that I want to come up to, especially this weekend. Eric Dyers, Newcastle, Tottenham. Tottenham should have won that game. They missed so many good opportunities. But in the final moments, there's a time where he jumps up and it's his arm that's not in line, but it's sort of a flap. It's sort of part of jumping up and it hits him. What did you make of that one?
It's a tough one. I mean, again, in the rules, I think it's handball, but it's clear to anyone that's played football or watched a lot of football that the ball goes behind you. I could understand if he spread his arms as wide as he could in the knowledge that even though the ball's behind him, if he gets headed towards goal, there's a chance it would hit his arm and stop it. And I guess that's what they possibly thought he was trying to do. But it's incredibly harsh. It is incredibly, incredibly harsh. And that's the sort of thing that will infuriate fans and coaches for at least the rest of this season. And look, if that's a penalty, then we will see 100 handball penalties this year.
I think Gabriel Bonloho said last week that strikers are going to love it this season because they're just going to be scoring a lot of penalties. There's going to be a lot given. When I look back to last weekend, Lindelof versus Crystal Palace, Man United, Crystal Palace, Lindelof's in a running position and he sort of hits him and he's only, 3 yards away from the ball. Stuff like that, it is going to infuriate a lot of fans, probably a lot of people in the sport. Do you think there's going to have to be sort of changes made to the rule or something? Something's going to have to be done.
Well, we're very fortunate now that it's finally coming in England. And if you know what IFAB is, right, they're the rule makers of football, but there's only 8 positions on IFAB, 8 people that have a vote at IFAB. 4 of the nations that have a vote at IFAB are the home nations of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, right? So we have half of the votes. The rest of the world has the other half of the votes, right? So if anyone can change this around, it's Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England. So if the fans here hate it, then there's going to be a lot of pressure on IFAB to change it, unlike when fans in Spain and Italy hated it because they clearly had no say in changing it.
Definitely. I want to talk to you about the West Brom v Chelsea game. Obviously, West Brom 3-0 up and then it ended up being a draw, 3-3. Just talk to me about that game and whether you think that actually Chelsea sort of were playing at the level in the second half, the level they should, or did West Brom sort of let it slip away?
Well, to be honest, I put a bet on Chelsea to draw when they were 3-0 down, so I'm pretty happy that they came back. But you could see it coming. Like I could see it coming. I'm not sure what other football fans thought. It wasn't really a legitimate 3-0 win at lead for West Brom, if you know what I mean. It was them capitalising on the mistakes, and I think it was evidence of what pundits and players will always tell you about the Premier League. If you make mistakes, you will get punished. Doesn't matter what side you're playing against. But I always felt Chelsea had the quality. Their squad at the moment is a little bit patchy. There's a lot of new players trying to integrate, trying to find out how they best gel with the other players on the pitch and also find out exactly what their best position is on the pitch. I think they will get a lot stronger. In terms of the actual match, though, they just let West Brom in too easily. Poor concentration for basically every goal. And as soon as they tighten that up, and they should be able to, the quality of player that they have, then I always felt that they could come back into the game with the forward talent that they have. So if I'm West Brom, okay, look, before the game, would you take a point against Chelsea? Absolutely would. So for their fans, they've just got to reflect on it a little bit like that. In the end, we know that money makes a difference in this league, and you were talking hundreds of millions of pounds worth of talent out there for Chelsea, which in the end was the reason that they got a draw. My main observation is actually a lot of people don't think, there are a lot of people out there, I think, that don't think Frank Lampard is as great a manager as the media and people made out, certainly for the first half of last season. And it will be a tough season for him if he doesn't sort out the issues defensively that they had last season. In fact, I'm not really sure he'll carry on as Chelsea manager if he can't. There's been massive investment. There's a lot of great players there. Clearly, they want to push towards back being a top 2 side. Certainly, they want to be very comfortably inside the Champions League spots. Anything less would be a bit of a failure. And so the pressure is on Frank Lampard, and he has to improve as a coach quickly. He just has to, because Thiago Silva's there, Ben Chilwell's there, Reece James, I think, is playing brilliantly. Okay, Antonio Rudiger looks like he might leave. Maybe they'll bring in another centre-back. But they've bought a new goalkeeper as well to address that problem. So if their defence is still leaky, there's only really one person you can look at for being responsible for that. So it's going to be a big season for them.
Another game I wanted to talk to you about is Man City versus Leicester. It was a bit of a shock because Man City last season obviously came second. We know that they bought in a few players. Today, it's been announced that they're close to signing Ruben Diaz from Benfica, so another centre-back. But it was evident yesterday that they do need some defensive reinforcements. What did you make of that result?
Yeah, I mean, they've probably got the most expensive defence in the league, so it's amazing that they need defensive reinforcements. They bought Nathan Ake for 41 million. They got Ruben Diaz, I think, for 62 million. I mean, it's just like, it's crazy money, right? They should have a stronger defence. Benjamin Mendy's a left back. He costs 50 plus million. You know, Carl Walker, 50 million. You know, how often can they spend 50 million pounds on a defender and still not have a good defence? So I'm hesitant to say it's the responsibility of the transfer market to solve their issues defensively. I also think that one of the main reasons they conceded 5 goals against Leicester was not their defence. In fact, it was their midfield. I mean, there was absolutely zero pressure on Leicester's players coming through, the likes of Tielemans, the likes of Mendy, Harvey Barnes. You know, they could basically do whatever they wanted yesterday. The press was lackluster, half-hearted. They left gaps, they left spaces, and they exposed the defence. And it's a new defence. It's a newish defence. Certainly players that haven't all played together for a huge number of games. So if you expose them like that, there's going to be gaps. And ultimately, if you watch the goals back again, you watch the penalty decisions back again, it's just Leicester midfield players strolling up, putting pressure on the back four, playing little through balls through to Maddison, who won a penalty, Vardy, who won a penalty. And in the end, I think the team defensive performance was the issue. That's the reason they conceded 5 goals. They can't keep buying £50 million players. So Pep Guardiola, you know, like I said, Frank Lampard's got to solve things. Pep has to solve things, because it's not a new issue for him either. They've lost 10 of their last 36 games. If you're going to take home a salary of 18, 19 million pounds a year, you've got to do the job, you know. And look, I'm one of those. I have faith in Pep. I still think Manchester City can have a big season. I still think one of the reasons Manchester City weren't great yesterday is because of playing in Europe. Not to make massive excuses for them, but they're clearly not up to 100%. Bayern Munich lost their opening game this weekend of the Bundesliga season 4-1, clearly not 100%. Inter conceded 3 goals on their first game back. They clearly aren't up to 100% just yet. And Manchester United have been awful, and they were involved in European competition and had their extra time off as well. So I'm looking at those sides thinking maybe these are almost like pre-season games for them in terms of where they're at physically. And that's making a massive excuse for Pep Guardiola and Manchester City, but I'm just trying to be fair.
You know, you spoke about Man United just then. First 2 games have been dreadful, to be honest. The first game, 3-1, they lost. But this game against Brighton, they got so lucky. I think Brighton hit the post crossbar 4 or 5 times. And they just ran the show. United got lucky with, not lucky, but towards the end, the final whistle's blown. It did hit the arm, so obviously the decision was correct. But in regards to the football, it wasn't great. Are you putting that down to solely that it's probably like still in sort of a pre-season mode in regards to match fitness? What are you putting it down to at the moment?
Well, look, if you could be sacked for winning a game, that was pretty much it. I mean, they could have conceded 7 or 8 goals against Brighton. The issues that we saw against Brighton are issues that we've seen before, so it's difficult to, look, if I've excused Manchester City, maybe I should excuse Manchester United. But there were mistakes in terms of the selection that were bemusing. Paul Pogba has been at Manchester United for quite a while. We know he's a hugely talented player. We've also seen him play badly in a deeper midfielder role 24 times, you know, and be criticised for it afterwards. So why play him there, you know? And in a way, I still think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wants to get the best out of his team and needs to find where that is. But you can't, in the space of 2 months, go to Brighton, absolutely hammer them, play the game of your life, and then show up and play one of the worst games you have under the same manager with pretty much exactly the same team. But Manchester United is a difficult one because I don't think they can solve their issue in the transfer market. I do think the manager doesn't have a plan B for them. I've never been convinced by him as a top-level manager. The football that they've played all depends on their first 11 players being fit, their best 11 players being fit. Beyond that, when he makes a few changes, there's a huge drop-off. And for me, that's not good enough. That's not good enough in terms of whoever built the squad at Manchester United, whether that be Ed Woodward, the executive vice chairman, or whether that be Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Someone has to take responsibility for what's going on at Man United. But they need a miraculous end to the transfer window, pretty much, to have a great season for me. Jadon Sancho won't solve the issues that they've got. Upamecano at RB Leipzig, the centre-back, he won't solve the issues that they've got. Mauricio Pochettino might, and we'll see whether he's the Man United manager by the end of the year.
Well, I just want to, obviously, it's been only a couple of weeks, so I want to ask what your predictions are for the actual season. So for the top four, and who you think is going to get relegated.
Right, I've got to stay true to the predictions I made before a ball was kicked. Now, clearly, after the end of the transfer window, I think you have a better idea of who has the best squads. And also, I think after you see them play a few games, you have an idea, right? Well, listen, I know there are Arsenal fans that will be disappointed with my selections. Spurs fans will probably be shocked themselves that I've put them as fourth place. I think they'll reach the top four this year. Got a feeling that Jose Mourinho will get the right blend there. In fact, I made that prediction before they signed Gareth Bale or Reguilon, the left back. But I just had the feeling that he was going to make them, I'll be honest with you, not great to watch, but a lot more solid. Towards the end of last season, he did. And they managed to build up a bit of momentum, just being hard to beat. If they sign a centre-half, which is actually why I put them in there, thinking they would go for a centre-half because that's a position they drastically needed, and clearly they haven't. If they do get a centre-back by the end of the window, then I think they will have a really good season as long as that centre-back plays okay. I'm not convinced by Eric Dyer, I'll be honest with you. Third place, I've gone for Chelsea. I just think the number of additions that they made, the fact that they had a pretty decent season last year, I'm hopeful that they'll build on it, and I think they will get the blend right at Chelsea. Liverpool, I put second. Again, bear in mind, before a ball was kicked and Manchester City got hammered yesterday, but I had the feeling that Manchester City would be revitalised, re-energised, have a little bit more ambition and desire to get their title back. And also I felt that Liverpool playing at that very high level for the last 3 seasons are bound to have a bit of a lull because it's difficult mentally and physically to keep that level up. That being said, having watched the first couple of games, it looks like they can. So, but we'll see what happens. In terms of the bottom 3, having watched them in the Championship last year, both Fulham and West Brom for me, you could tell last year, and this is nothing against them in particular, but they just haven't got the squads, I don't think, to stay up this year. It will be really difficult for both of them. And the other team that I think will get relegated is Aston Villa, who basically should have been relegated last year if goal line technology was working properly against Sheffield United. So they're the only team to be in the Premier League who don't actually deserve to be in the Premier League in the history of the competition. And karma will come back for them. So I think Aston Villa is my third team to go down. So there you go. Hope it's right. Otherwise, I'll look ridiculous.
Well, we asked some others from the world of sport their predictions. Here's what they had to say.
So my predictions for the Premier League this season are as follows. The top 4 in the Premier League, I think, will be very closely run between Liverpool and Manchester City at the top. I do think that at this moment, with the signings that Manchester City have made, I still think they need more, and that's why I think Liverpool will pit them to the title. I think Chelsea will finish 3rd and Manchester United will come in 4th position. Down the bottom end, I think there's going to be a really tough season for both Fulham and West Bromwich Albion. I do think that both teams will be relegated. And the team that I fear for also finishing in the bottom 3 is Burnley. I just feel the lack of investment that they've had will catch up with them with an aging squad, and you can see Sean Dyche now getting frustrated.
Top four is tough for me. I think this top four is going to be a close run thing. I think between the fourth spot and the champions are going to be closer this season. I'm going to go with fourth spot. I'm going with Chelsea. I think that's some fantastic signings, but I just think everybody's going to step up the game. So yeah, Chelsea in fourth. Man City, I think the defence is going to cost them. They're going with third. Man United, midfield's on fire. Hopefully creative, getting a couple of signings. We'll go second. But I think the gulf with Liverpool is just too vast at the moment, and I see them winning the league again, unfortunately. It'll be closer, but I think they'll just nick it. My bottom three in the Premier League this season is, last, I'm going with West Brom. Second bottom, I'm going with Fulham. And I think for those two teams, similar sort of reasons, I think the gulf between the Championship and the Premier League is too big for them to cope with. Third from bottom, I'm going West Ham. I think there's something going on in the club there, and I just don't think they're going to get away with it this season.
Guys, it's your boy Viper Sport Forward back in the building. I'm doing a video for my friends at Sportology. They've asked me to predict my top four for the Premier League this season, and mine is a little bit controversial, but this is the final decision I've gone for. Arsenal, I feel like, will finish fourth. They've got a good squad and a very good manager in Arteta. The style of football they're playing now, it seems like they can really be the dark horses and finish fourth. Let's move on. Third, my team. I think Chelsea are going to snatch third. I do believe they will be a lot more competitive than what I'm saying. They couldn't even finish second, but I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt and saying, you know what? Third is respectful. In second place, it's last season's champions, Liverpool. I feel like Liverpool haven't amended their squad as much, and I feel like a lot of the other teams will start to figure them out now. So I think they will finish second to Manchester City. I feel like Manchester City on paper, you have to make them the Premier League champions for this season. They've got depth. They've got a hungry Pep Guardiola who now wants to win a trophy again. And on paper, you really can't write them off. So for me, that is my top four. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys.
Top four this season. Top four this season is going to be a combination of, I can't even tell you. I'm trying to think about who exactly is going to be in what position, but it's going to be a combination of City, Liverpool, United, Chelsea. I think it's running the same thing. I think the same thing is going again. I think it's going to rejumble, and it might reshuffle in one way or another. I think I'm going to see, based on Chelsea, because Chelsea play today, I'm going to see what Chelsea are really saying, because they've gone in this window, and the expectation on their shoulders is going to be super, super high. At the same time, Pep Guardiola, he needs to be about something this season as well. So I think we're going to get those four. What order is left to be said. Without seeing everybody play at least a couple games, it's so difficult to like nail it in and say, okay, yeah, I'm going for this. But if you're going to ask me, I'll go for those four. I think the people that are going to be knocking on the door heavily is, I think Arsenal are going to be pretty good this season, to be honest with you. Yeah. Like, I'm usually brushing Arsenal all day, every day. I'm cussing them all day, every day. But I think they're actually going to be really good. I think Arteta has been given the time to put in his ideals into his players and stuff like that. And I think we'll see a better Arsenal this year. I think Leicester are going to be thereabouts. I think Everton are going to be knocking on that door. And I think Leeds are going to finish in the top half of the season.
So there's everyone's views on the predictions this season. But back to just talking about this season now, Hugh. Obviously tonight there's a football match, Liverpool-Arsenal, quite a big one. What's your prediction on that? How do you think it's going to go?
It's going to be really interesting to see how Mikel Arteta sets up. They've been a lot better defensively. There is no bigger test at the moment in football in England than Liverpool. So it's a real big litmus test to see how far their defence has come. They're certainly more aggressive. They're certainly more niggly. That's what you need to be, I think, in the Premier League. To be a top side, you need to be prepared to take the yellow cards. You need to be prepared to give away fouls to stop the other team from playing. They're certainly better equipped to do that now. Willian's a great addition. I think his experience is going to help them throughout the season. Gabriel, the centre-back, has looked great in the first couple of games. They didn't play great against West Ham United in their last Premier League game, but they managed to get the win. For me, that's a positive sign. That's a more positive sign than beating Manchester City and Chelsea in the FA Cup last year. I think being able to win the games that you don't particularly play great in is actually is going to be the fundamental basis of a successful season. The days when you play well, they're great. You get the 3 points, but you need to get points on the days that you're not quite at it. So I'm not sure Arsenal fans will like it, but if Mikel Arteta goes there, tries to spoil the game, possibly plays 3 at the back or 5 at the back, however you want to see it, I think it's good. I think they could keep it to a low-scoring affair. I obviously think that will take something away from them at the top end of the pitch, but they have been able to spring the counter-attack against the better sides, and they have been able to score goals through Aubameyang mainly. And I think that might work for them tonight, to be perfectly honest, because the Liverpool defence hasn't been great. I think it will be a draw. I'm going to say 1-1. I think it's going to be tight, but I think for Arsenal fans, they'll be hugely encouraged by that. And for Liverpool fans, who I think they'll have the most of the ball, most of the possession, most of the chances, or at least half chances, they'll walk away saying, well, we did our absolute most and Arsenal just played well. So I'm happy to make a prediction that it's going to be a low-scoring affair. I'm going to go 1-1. I know most people think it's going to be 5-4, but I'm going to go 1-1.
It is fair to say that Arsenal, since the sort of lockdown and the comeback, they've been on the rise. You know, they've been doing very well. Probably, I would say, in my opinion, the team that has just continued to do better and better ever since that break's done them the world of good.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with you. I think it's just getting used to the manager, bedding in terms of a new system. There's a lot of younger players there who are building confidence quite clearly the more games they play, the likes of Saka. I think Kieran Tierney was injured. I think he was always going to be a great addition for Arsenal, but he's taken a while to get to 100%. He's just come down from Scotland, and he's exactly what you would expect in terms of his grit and determination in matches. Again, that's some of the difference in terms of characters on the field that Arsenal need. It's great to sign Aubameyang to a new deal, and I think once it became apparent he was going to sign it, that lifted the players as well. Look, I just think they're happy to be getting results. I think that will lift the mood. And yeah, you know, a lot of credit has to go to Mikel Arteta for changing that. He has been a breath of fresh air for them that they've needed for quite a while. I think he's drawn the line around what's acceptable and what's not on the field and off it. And that has been a major turning point for them as well. You know, Matteo Guendouzi has not been allowed to behave however he wants. It sent a message to the rest of the squad. But also Granit Xhaka, who was left out to one side because of the fact that he had an issue with the fans, has been able to be reintegrated as well. So he's clearly managed to get a balance of who he wants and who he doesn't want. And I think you're seeing that out on the pitch.
Hugh, we're a week away from the end of the transfer window. But at this present time, there's been quite a few big signings in regards to James Rodriguez to Everton. You've got Thiago going to Liverpool. You've got Gareth Bale, which is probably the one that dominated the transfer window, going to Spurs. But in your opinion, what's been the signing of this transfer window so far?
Well, it's hard not to say James Rodriguez, isn't it, at Everton. I always thought he was going to be a success here. I was pretty surprised that people were saying he wasn't. And for me, that could only have been people who hadn't seen him out on the pitch for the last couple of years. He had injury issues, but it's interesting, isn't it? Bale had loads of injury issues, and everyone's sitting there going, he's going to be amazing, can't wait for him to get out on the pitch. James Rodriguez had his injury issues, and people are like, Everton are getting a finished, washed-up James Rodriguez. Both players of superb quality on their day, and James Rodriguez looks fit, looks ready to go. He's playing really well. I mean, so far, you'd have to say it's him. However, I think if Chelsea get it right, Timo Werner could be an amazing signing for them. Kai Havertz could be an amazing signing for them. Willian, who, of course, we're all familiar with, we might not say that he's going to be an incredible signing, but ultimately, in terms of tilting the balance at Arsenal from the sort of squad that was a little bit more immature and looking to the touchline a lot, to have a player of his established quality and success at the club is a major coup as well. So it's not always the big name signings that make a difference. But yeah, I guess so far it'll be James Rodriguez. Look, if Manchester United get Jadon Sancho, that would be incredible for them. Maybe he could be the signing of the year. Ruben Diaz, to be honest, at Manchester City could be the signing of the year if they can plug the defence and he can form a partnership with Laporte, because that might take them to the title. So at this point, a bit too early to say. I know James has made a great start, but who knows? Really, who knows?
Well, before we finish, I just want to ask basically who you think, out of all the players you've seen play live, because obviously you've been in the game for a long time, who's the greatest player that you've ever watched play live?
Oh, I've seen some great players play live. I think officially the greatest player I've ever seen live is Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo, because I think he will go down in history as one of the greatest players ever in terms of like he's top 5. Let's be honest, isn't he? He's top 5. Even if you put Messi, Maradona, Zidane in there, you know, I think he's top 5, right? Pele, of course. But the best player I think I've seen in terms of like my jaw on the floor, this guy is incredible, was Ronaldinho, who was he was incredible. I mean, he was incredible. He had a touch like with his chest that most players don't even have with their feet. You know, it was just like you just watched him and it was mesmerizing. But it was also the fact that obviously we all know he played with a smile on his face. He enjoyed it. But yeah, he was amazing. And he's one of the players. He's one of my favorite players ever. Probably my favorite player ever in my top 3 as well. I got to see live. Was Andres Iniesta, who was just like a cerebral footballer, honestly. It was like Magneto or Professor X playing football. It was just like, you know, he did see the game faster than anyone else. And that, I think, makes a huge difference, you know. He knew before anyone else what he was going to do because he never really had the physical attributes. And I think that is one of the reasons that his game was what it was. You know, he just had to anticipate things and try and get ahead of other players because he wasn't going to blast past them. You know, he wasn't going to sprint past them. He just had to outthink them. And yeah, look, I hope football fans out there think he's one of the greatest ever because if they don't, then I don't know what to tell them, honestly.
They're missing out.
Yeah.
Well, Hugh, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great talking to you.
No, thank you. Pleasure. Anytime.
No,
Great. And hopefully once the season's a little bit further in, we can get you back on and see if your predictions are still the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I won't make any wagers at this point, just in case I've got to pay up when I come back. But yeah, pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Hugh. Appreciate that, mate.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That was great to have Hugh Woozencroft joining us there to get all his insights into the football this season, his predictions and transfers, the favourite players. Make sure you're subscribed. We have plenty more coming up. Make sure you like and leave some comments for us so we can get your opinions too. Stay tuned. Lots more coming up and we'll see you next time.